Greetings gamers, and welcome to the 107th livestream from MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we are going to be diving into the history of ranged weapons, ranged combat, and cover. As well, we have a very exciting announcement. We are officially 100% now affiliates. We've gotten all this stuff in the background set up, everything's been done, so the next stage is going to be really fun because starting next month, I'm going to be talking to some artists, getting our emotes drafted, getting some other specialties figured out, and we'll be expanding upon what our bits, our cheers, all of that can start to do for you guys, what the subs will have offered to them in Discord. So we're getting all that planned out, but it is official. So yeah, we're finally there. Thank you guys so much for everything you guys have done for us. It's been a really crazy year and a half. But yeah, it's just we're looking forward to the next big growth. Shorts are coming. I have one fully completed. I have about half a dozen that just need some fine tuning and some what's the word I'm looking for? Need the captions, and then those are going to be ready. So hopefully starting next month, if I can get all of the editing that I want done this weekend, I'll have basically like at minimum one a week going. Music's a little bit loud. Let me take care of the music. Thank you so much, Vixie. Bam. Let me go. I'm always worried that you only ever hear the bass or like the loud stuff, but but I do like the music in the background. So anyway, but yeah, so shorts, more YouTube content starting next month. I'm really excited for that, and I'm really excited to see what we can do starting with the new affiliate program. So without further ado, let me bring in Kage. Welcome, congratulations.
Shalom, congratulations.
I don't know, man. How does it feel? Like,
this is it, man. Like it's dope, but like it's cool because we just keep doing exactly what we've always been doing.
Right.
And enjoying the really good vibe. Good flow, you know. What does Bruce Lee say? Be like water, my friend. Yeah. You know, water can flow, it can crash. You know.
Yeah,
let's
I'm
flow.
digging it. It's been a wild growth, but I'm super happy with it. So I sound quiet, so that's probably because of my my settings. So let me change that. So you sound good. I turn myself down in hopes that I'd be able to turn you up.
Okay.
All right, so let's see if that's any better for audio check. I obviously, like, it's always been hopeful. Hey, Lepa, good morning. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the first official affiliate stream.
Good morning,
much better. Thank you, Vixie. Thank you so much for checking in on that. Hoylepa, you were here for the very first affiliate stream. We finally made it. Thanks to all of you for showing up and chatting. So yeah, it's kind of exciting. We're gonna have hopefully a very interesting next month. I'm excited to start doing like the YouTube content and the TikTok content, but I'm also partially like, are we ready? If the stars align, are we ready to suddenly have 20, 30, 100 more followers? Like, maybe not viewers, but like, are we ready for a potential just like influx? I don't know. I think the reason I don't know is because background here for all of you guys. I have a list. We have a list of topics that we like to do. Thank you, Hoylepa. We have a list of things that we want to do. Obviously, we have a huge, backlog of the submissions from you guys, which is fantastic. Keep those coming. But when it comes to topics, we have a list of ideas, and obviously D&D is infinite in the potential topics that we can talk about.
Facts.
But trying to either organize a set of notes that makes sense to go through, that doesn't take, writing a script or take months or weeks, like trying to collaborate on an idea that we can speak on with confidence and I don't want to say authority, but with some sort of background, right? Like I try to do my research. Internet Archive is super helpful for that, being able to find like the rare books and everything and the supplementals to gather some information. But in the long run, it's hard for me because I don't do scripts. I don't want to do weeks of research for a topic. I love our dynamic setup. I love our tangents. I love that we kind of discuss more about the approach to D&D than we do the hard rules of D&D. And I think that's always been our goal, right?
Facts.
We started with the motto of Beyond the Book to promote an
100%.
idea that the book's a good foundation, but DMs, players need to be willing to realize that the story goes beyond that, right? And while I've, always appreciated the term rule of cool, I feel like just how I felt in the back in the day that homebrew kind of diminishes what DMs are really like encouraged to do in the first place. I originally felt like homebrew was kind of a diminishing term for what was expected of a DM, right? To grow a narrative. But that's, a different world. We're in a different world now where homebrew is synonymous with gameplay, which it always should have been. But back in my day, that's not how a lot of the community thought. And similar, I think, to this now, right? Where I don't want to get caught up in those kind of semantics. I want to I want us to grow, and I want us to do what we want to do and do it the best way we can. And being creative and dynamic, having our open discussions is what brings out the best in us. I think it brings out the best ideas. It's why we don't talk about homebrew before the episode, because we could discuss all of the same things that you guys would see on stream. And at the end of the day, we would come back, we would have talked about 20 things for 2 hours off stream, come back on stream, talk about 5 of the best ones in 30 minutes, and then the stream would be over. And all of those tangents, even if we've been like, oh yeah, you had this weird idea, and we'd be like, yeah, it was this, but we wouldn't have the
much
energy
harder to rehash after the fact rather than bring it to you with the raw energy that comes with the creative juices flowing.
Exactly. I mean, I've been the same way. I mean, I'm the kind of person, I don't mind public speaking. I don't mind running meetings. I don't mind doing things like that. I don't mind training people. And I would say I've never pre-planned for any of it. I don't write anything else. I mean, I'll do PowerPoints or something like that, but everything I say, I'm winging it. It's just, if I have that's why I like, either the homebrew or what we're doing today, where I can have just some basic notes, and then I can expand off of that, either based off of memory, or I just keep filling in the gaps. I have basic notes, I have my bullet points, and then I can, again, just like a DM, not make up details, but craft that narrative and have a 2-hour long discussion on 10 bullet points that I could have read to you in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
But being able to extrapolate each of those bullet points and talk about my experience, your experience, and discuss not just what should be or what's supposed to be, but talk about what we've done, what we liked and disliked about it, and then what we've learned from that to influence how it influenced now how we approach it. That's what I think I appreciate the most about just the format that we have. And I think long-winded, coming back to the whole point, I love what we do. I'm so happy for the growth, and while I'm not surprised, it is kind of a pleasant surprise to have happened just like so suddenly. I don't know if the format that we have is ready for kind of an explosive growth, right? Like if we suddenly had 20, 30 people in chat, it's like, is our format prepared for that? Because we are very interactive in all of that, and we are very divisive sometimes in terms of the topics that we talk about, or at least go against the grain in terms of I think what the greater community would consider. So I don't know, sometimes I wonder, can we keep up? But at the same time, like you said, it's all about just going with it, right?
Yeah.
If we do explode, it's because we were doing what we were doing, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of things in life that you learn, for those adults out there, because it says, it's a 18 plus only, but I'm just saying, for all the adults out there who understand, the older you get, the more you understand that it's not always about, the race. It's not always about getting to the end fast. And yeah, kind of like that, where it's like, if you're doing the right thing, don't change it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think if there's reason for growth, it's probably because we're already on the right path, and there's no need to expect that because the growth is there, we then need to adjust course. I think that's actually a big issue that a lot of people do have starting out, is when they blow up, they assume now I have to do different things, and it's like, but you blew up for a reason. Stay that course because that's why you blew up, right? Like, don't forget like the roots. And it's like, while I do want to get into YouTube, I do want to do some somewhat scripted content, do more like structured episodes. I always want this to just be like the bread and butter. I really just want to keep D&D discussions just open discussions about the histories, about the approaches, about the
100%.
topics. And I do hope that continues to be like good solid growth. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm here for
Wait, but yes, sorry, I was on a long-winded rant there. Thank you. But happy birthday. I am so happy for you. Yeah, my birthday was like 2-3 weeks ago. So yeah, July,
That's
babies.
right.
Woohoo.
That's
we
right.
got this. It's a good month. It's a good month, all right, so I don't know if Dez is going to show up. So we do have a topic for you guys today. We do have the history of ranged weapons. We're going to go over ranged weapons. A little bit of the ranged weapons. We're going to go mostly over the ranged mechanics, talk about cover, talk about damages, talk about distances. We're going to basically cover all about the evolution of ranged combat, basically.
Okay.
But we do have a quick side topic that I think was posted by Dez last stream that you weren't here. It was a stream that you weren't here. It was on the 15th. It wasn't this last Monday, but it was the Monday before.
Okay.
But for some reason, we didn't go over it on Monday. I didn't remember to go over it on Monday.
Okay.
Hoylepa says, I go with the wisdom. The shit you go through today is the fertilizer for you tomorrow. I like that. So that's actually, I love idioms like that because they get right to the point. I love those.
That's so funny.
I have something similar. So at work, I have a much more work appropriate version because you know how like in Outlook, like people will have like their signature, which is like their name, their title, and then like their contact information. Mm-hmm. But then like sometimes below that, you'll have like people who do like extra stuff. Right. So I've always liked a certain quote, and I didn't hear it from anywhere. Like it may not be mine. I may not have created it. It wasn't like someone told me this. I just have a memory that I've always just remembered this quote, but I don't know if I just kind of developed it myself or if I heard it from someone or if I read it somewhere. So I have no idea who I'm quoting. Right. But I'm not taking credit for it either. It's one of those things I've always had it in my head, but I have no idea where it came from. But I put this quote in my email signature. I've always had this one. It's very short and sweet, but very similar to this little idiom. Is basically today is the day we create our tomorrow, and it's always just kind of my like mindset of like just remember that what you're doing right now is setting yourself up for later. So it's like it's cool because it's kind of professional. It sounds wisdom. Like high wisdom, but it's always just something that I really do like to have in my mind is that's just really clean. What you're doing today is going to create your tomorrow. It's like the idea of don't go to bed mad because then you're gonna have a bad day tomorrow. Yes. Like the idea of you're setting yourself up. It's always funny to me like when people think about like the food they eat. It's like remember what you're eating today is going to get your fuel for tomorrow. Yes. Which is why you don't want to have junk food the day before you're going to have to do a whole bunch of stuff, right? So it's like that. At work, the mindset of what the assignments you don't do today or what you don't get set up today will be prepped tomorrow. So it's just like I do like the idioms that basically talk about pushing that off, right? And the idea of like shit becoming tomorrow's fertilizer is great. Like it's that whole thing of what might be bad. You say the nicer version of basically like you always learn a lesson, right? Yeah. Or the silver lining, right? For every cloud has a silver lining kind of thing. But this one is I think a little bit more. It's less lofty. It's less pipe dreamy, and it's more reality. And I don't mean raw and dirty because we're talking about shit. I just mean that it's more like to the core of actually that means a lot of like yes, right now this is a terrible situation, but this could foster growth. Like those are much better idioms in my opinion, and it's unfortunate that being politically correct has kind of boiled them down to being a lot less impactful. Yeah. Don't worry about the genius. They only get faster bad ideas. That's a good one. I like
That's
that
funny.
one. There was another one I heard recently that I liked. It was I think it was a. I don't know what culture it came from, but it was like basically an insult. Like when people, like, you know how in America we have like you say in the South, they like whenever you hear, oh, you know, like bless your heart, you know, it's kind of like a backhanded, like, oh child, bless your heart, like
you stupid person.
yeah, right. Like, so I don't remember where this one was from. Just because I'm not that well educated. I want to say it sounded more of like a Jamaican accent, but I don't know enough to distinguish. But it was hilarious what they said, because it kind of sounded like one of these where, but it was, again, more of an insult to, like, if you want to talk about someone you don't like or someone who's kind of stupid, you say, oh, like, if you say, like, you know, my friend did this, and you're trying to say, like, oh, your stupid friend, but instead of saying your stupid friend, you say, oh, yeah, the one that wisdom been chasing, but that boy can run. And it's like, that's like those little tiny like backhanded compliments.
Yes.
The one that wisdom's been chasing, but man, that boy can run.
Wow. I want to help you. You don't want it.
Oh,
That's funny.
yeah, and it's just like, and then you just think of like all the ways that you can like twist that. It's like, especially like then I want to like, you know, apply those to D&D. It's like, oh, where'd your friend go? It's like, oh yeah, the one that would bring a torch to the sunrise.
Yeah.
or the one that lights a torch after sunrise, kind of thing. Like, we should do that. Make a list of like backhanded insults D&D wise.
That's funny.
That's great. Oh, maybe we should do like a something in the Discord eventually where we can have people submit like wisdoms from like either their culture or their past, like what Holepa just did, and then we can try to convert some of the best ones into cool. like D&D versions.
That would be very cool.
I like that.
I'm gonna be right back, good sir.
All right, so I'm gonna get this set up because we have one topic to cover, basically kind of like a decision question, and then we'll get into our history. So last time, so not this last Monday, but the Monday that I had reviewed without Kage, the subclass was a conversionalist, and this was an artificer subclass, and I can't remember the context of the conversation, unfortunately, and I don't see Dez in the chat, so I don't think they're going to help me out here. But there was a conversation that was happening in chat regarding the ability of legendary resistance and an ability from a wand called Spindle of Fate, which is a legendary item from the Book of Many Things. So we were talking about kind of what would happen first sort of thing. And I'm trying to figure out, I had the note here, but now I'm just blanking completely. The note wasn't as clear as I wanted it to be. But because I think the conversation we were having was whether they go off at the same time or not. And I think I was ruling that by the way that it reads, it's not so much that they would counter each other because they both have a trigger after the fact. And that was my ruling. So I was really curious to see, I think, what Kage said about that. Let's see. Yeah, it would have been really nice. I'm pretty sure it was with Dez that we were having that conversation with. But I have them both pulled up here, so I'm going to see what Kage feels about this. Because a legendary resistance is basically saying if they fail a saving throw, you can choose to succeed instead. So it's basically on a fail, you can choose to basically say no, to override it. So that right there overrides something after the fact. It was something that was going to happen, and this overrides it. And then Spindle of Fate has an ability called Twist of Fate that says when a creature within 60 feet makes a saving throw or an attack roll, you can use your reaction to expend 3 charges and alter the outcome, turning a failed saving throw into a successful one, a missed attack roll into a hit, or vice versa, meaning you can make a miss. So the question was, I think, can they counter each other? So I think the idea was, can the Spindle of Fate, can Twist of Fate counter legendary resistance? And I think I ruled no, because this says when they make a saving throw or an attack roll, you can alter the outcome. So it means that at the time you see it happen and then you alter it. Whereas I would say it's whoever basically goes off first, right? Like whichever one you would consider going off faster, because if the Lich, say, fails a saving throw and then uses legendary resistance, I'm just trying to get this out now so when Kage comes back I can say it better. But my ruling was like, if the Lich had used legendary resistance to change it to a success, Twist of Fate's no longer, because it doesn't say it changed it to a success or altering the die roll. It just says you can choose to succeed instead. So you just succeeded. This says that you're changing a actual successful saving throw to a failed one. So I don't necessarily see that the Lich is turning it and then they're turning it back. They both trigger at the same thing. They both have the same trigger, so they can't really counter each other because they don't counter. Like for instance, if a Lich made a saving throw, and it succeeded, and then Spindle of Fate activated and said, "No, you failed your saving throw." The Lich can't then use legendary resistance because it's not a failed saving throw. Well, I guess you could say that because this one specifically says it turns a failed throw into a successful one. This one says if the Lich fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed it instead. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to interpret it, but, based off of, like, which way you want to read it, I still don't like the idea that they can trump each other because for the way I read it, they both activate on the same thing, which is the saving throw was made and the outcome was decided. Then both of these have the choice. Once that roll was decided, both of you have the choice to activate. But once you two activate, kind of like in Magic, right? If you're putting down cards, it's order of operations. So if, spell goes off, saving throw happens, saving throw, succeeds or fails. So we know what the determination is. The next thing on the top of the pile is either going to be the legendary resistance changing it or Spindle of Fate changing it. So therefore, if this was a saving throw and the determination of the saving throw, either of these are going to go right there. So then you can't do this again because they're not actually changing the saving throw. So that's my order of operations. That's a very dirty way of saying that. So we're going to see what Kage thinks. Oh, hey, look. It's our favorite co-host. All right, so I just went a very long-winded way of what we're just about to repeat, but it's going to be a lot cleaner now.
I'm here for it.
So again, I wish Des was here. I see them live in Discord, but I don't see them live in chat, so they can't confirm it with us. That's all right. So essentially, what's going on here is it was a conversation between legendary resistance and an ability from a wand called Spindle of Fate. That's from the Book of Many Things.
Okay.
So the argument was, or not the argument, but the thing that I was deciding versus I think what they were representing was whether or not these could impact each other. So it's more of a question, in my opinion, this is a question of, is this a alteration of what's happening so they do affect each other, or is it an order of operations thing like Magic the Gathering and they can't affect each other? So that's where I'm just going to preface that's the conversation is, should they essentially what did I write down here? Yeah, can they counter each other? So either you're on the fence if they can counter each other, or it's whoever goes off first. So one side of the field is that they're altering something so they can affect each other.
Okay.
Versus the other side of the field, which is no, they both activate on the same thing, so only one of them can happen. Once one happens, it undoes the other's ability to activate.
Interesting.
So,
yes.
Bad way of describing it, but I wanted to preface this is the direction we're heading with this conversation, so
Okay.
because we have a whole topic that we got to get to.
Fair enough.
Okay, so Legendary Resistance is pretty easy. I just have it based off of a Lich build here. But Legendary Resistance is essentially if a Lich fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. That's it. That's all we have.
Sure.
So, in my opinion, that's telling me if I rolled the saving throw, then determination. We have a key to, because some abilities say before you know, the whole point is
Right.
this is roll was done, determination made, then I can choose to make a legendary resistance. Now it specifically just says it can choose to succeed instead, not change the die, not add you succeed instead. So that's legendary resistance.
Got it.
Spindle of Fate is a wand, has a couple different, it has some stuff it can do, but we're specifically looking at one ability called Twist of Fate.
Okay.
When a creature within 60 feet of you makes a saving throw or an attack roll, you can use your reaction to expend 3 charges and alter the outcome.
Okay.
Turning a failed saving throw into a successful one, a missed attack into a hit, or vice versa. So a successful saving throw into a failed. So again, in my opinion, this is saying that a saving throw was rolled, a determination was made, then you're saying, boom, I'm flipping it. No, you're either, if it's a success, now it's a failure. If it's a failure, now it's a success. Right? So those are the two things we're talking about.
Yes.
One is a reaction. Basically, it's a resistance. It's the self-reaction. Instantaneously, I failed, now I succeeded. This one, any saving throw I see, I can switch. So the question is, can they counter each other? If a Lich fails a saving throw, uses legendary resistance to make it a save, can Twist of Fate go no?
I now see that success that you just gave yourself, and I want to turn it into a failure.
So do you want to soundboard and think this through, or do you want to hear my reasoning? I don't want to persuade you or bias you. Do you want to soundboard first and figure it out yourself, or do you want to hear my reasoning? Because the question is whether they can counter each other or whether or not it's which one ever comes first.
Let me chew for like a third of a second.
Yeah, no, you chew on it, take it home. It's delicious.
So, do they affect each other?
Can they counter each other?
Off?
Like,
can one stop the other?
So so let's say the same Lich succeeded a saving throw. Twist of Fate goes off and says, no, you don't. Can the Lich turn around and use legendary resistance? And vice versa, if it used legendary resistance on a failed, can this undo their legendary resistance and go back to the fail, right? So it's a mechanical question, not just a wording question. It's both rules as written, but it's also a very mechanical order of operations question of what is actually happening behind the scenes.
My instinct when it comes to rules as written, just straight up, like, because of the way I read what it says, I want to say that they can affect each other.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it specifically says a success. It doesn't say like
but okay, no, keep going. I'm gonna let you're soundboarding first. I don't wanna throw my side in yet.
The only reason I'm saying that is because,
so remember, this is what it says so for Spindle, it says you can turn a failed or a successful saving throw into a failed one. So you turn the saving throw. Legendary Resistance says if a Lich fails a saving throw, it becomes successful. So it's both of them specifically say the saving throw is what they're affecting. Like, it's the saving throw that they direct at, Not necessarily whether it's a success or failure, but it's the saving throw and whether or not they can just basically flip it. So remember, that's why I said it's the throw and then there's the determination, right? So it's not just, you're not modifying the throw, right? You're not adding or subtracting. You're waiting for the throw to be done. That action has taken place. We know what the outcome is. Both of these affect the outcome. So then, can they affect each other after they've affected the outcome?
So if they affect the outcome,
Rules as written does equal raw. Yes, whatever.
A brawl. Oh, always. But if we're talking about the outcome, in my mind, no matter what is happening, that's how things affect is the outcome. So what I mean is, I feel like that would always be the case.
So my argument, I see where you're going. That's why I was really curious about it. So my argument is that no, they don't affect each other, because I look at it like a magic game, right? Order of operations. The roll is one of the steps, because other things can affect a roll. Modifiers can affect the roll, not the outcome. They affect the roll, because you're adding to the dice, you're modifying the dice. The outcome is important to me. The reason why I say the outcome is a different step, a different card, because the outcome is a trigger for other things. Other things let you do things before you know the outcome of something. Other things trigger after you know the outcome of something, like these. So I feel like it's important to identify that the roll and the outcome are technically two different parts of this, just because they get affected differently. I feel like just verbiage-wise, it's important to me to say those two things are fundamentally different because different things can affect them.
So then earlier, the verbiage was talking about the roll.
Yeah. So when and even if you don't agree with me on the outcome being a separate piece, that's my thing. But even if you don't agree with me on that, both of these trigger. My issue is that when you look at them, they both trigger on the same event. So let's say there's a lich. That lich rolls a saving throw. Both their legendary resistance triggers on a fail. The Spindle of Fate, triggers on a fail or a success based on your choice. But they both trigger on the outcome. They neither trigger before you know what the outcome is. You can't do this before you know if they succeed. You can't say you're gonna fail. You have to wait for them to succeed to use the power. Like, even if you say, hey, I have this power, you're gonna fail regardless because I'm gonna make you. You can't use, again, mechanically speaking, you can't use the power. Same thing with the resistance. You can't just say, I'm not gonna make my saving throw. Like, okay, because if these powers enacted before the roll, there would be liches would never have a saving throw. They'd be like, I'm not rolling. I'm gonna save it anyway, right? You still have to fail in order to change it, right? Mechanically speaking only, not narratively, but the point being, if you're gonna roll a saving throw and use this ability, you can't just not roll the saving throw. That's not technically how it works. You have to trigger it. So because they both have a trigger, my opinion is that if the lich fails and it triggers and he fails a saving throw, he triggers his legendary resistance. So roll the dice, legendary resistance. Wand of Fate is going to trigger on this card here, the dice roll. This triggered as the next action, so Dice of Fate can't now stack. Because this is not the dice roll. I've switched it to a success. I've gotten rid of my dice roll and surpassed it.
Interesting.
Same thing with Dice of Fate. If the lich makes a successful saving throw, Twist of Fate comes in and says, I'm gonna invert that to a failure. The lich can't do his legendary resistance because it's not the saving throw that failed. His only reacts on a failed saving throw. This doesn't change it. It changes the outcome, but it doesn't change the roll. They both specifically trigger on the roll. So my ruling personally in High Point was that they would not trigger each other or they would not counter, because if you think about them as there's a dice roll, then one of them trigger. Like think about this in Magic the Gathering, right? If a spell goes off and then someone counters or intercepts, and then another intercept comes in, it's order of operations. Well, this intercept unintercepted that one, so this spell still goes off. It's not that, well, I intercepted it first, so I stopped the spell anyway, but it's order of operations. So same thing with this. If you look at what actually happens, I rolled, wand would not have gone off if I didn't use my legendary reaction. But my legendary reaction as the Lich is not the failed roll. That's my legendary reaction. And vice versa, Spindle of Fate isn't my roll. It's the alteration after the fact. So I can't use a legendary reaction against it because I didn't roll the failure. I rolled a success. You changed it to a failure, but that means I didn't roll. So I may be being pedantic here, but that's how I read it. I read it as actions. I do get that,
but to me it sounds like they're targeting the success or they're targeting the failure, not the roll. But that's my point though. It's the roll of the dice roll though. But an outside force that changes it, they can't target that change now. Because that's an outside force. They're not targeting the dice roll anymore. You're right. It is targeting the success or failure of the roll, not an outside force. If it were a +6 to the roll, still works. Because that's still part of the roll. But this is said that roll's gone. I've usurped the roll. The roll said I failed. I said I don't. You can't. This one doesn't tell me I'm wrong. It tells my dice it was wrong. And again, I'm not right. You're not wrong. You're not right. I'm not wrong. Yeah, you're
it's our
true.
Approach.
Because here's the.
I was just really curious what
I can
you would
100%.
think.
I can see it both ways, and I know that sounds weird, but I definitely get where you're coming from, and I agree that makes a lot of sense. But I'm
not saying it's the best answer. It's just the one I like the most personally.
I can lightweight see the other way as well.
Oh no, I totally get the argument, and I think there's another reason. If you look at it from a 5th edition prism, you'd most likely want them to counter each other. It's very much in the dynamic of how combat works in 5th edition, but we've talked about this before. I think there is a little bit too much, I don't want to say player agency, but there is... D&D has really become player oriented. It's very... TPKs are kind of a threat, but it's for the most part, players expect to be able to win. There's an expectation they're going to win, right? I feel like a lot of that's just because they get a ton of stuff. And we've talked about this before when it comes to, you look at the monster manual, monsters get tough, but monsters in no way whatsoever escalate the same way player characters do. You look at the highest CR monsters and they do not have anywhere near the amount of feats, abilities, attack.
Yes.
They're still devastating. But the biggest thing they're devastating about is high HP and high damage output. That's really it. And then maybe some cunning stuff. But really,
what would be really interesting, and I've thought about this. How we have all these homebrew submissions for different classes and stuff for characters and stuff. I would love to see a bunch of submissions for DMs to just have additional feats that you could just add on to creatures, just different abilities and things that you can just mix and match, because you see a lot of the times when people want to create cool new homebrew stuff, there's a bunch of resources
to the source material.
Exactly, and there's a bunch of chunks that you can take from other pieces. You can take when wolves, they attack pack tactics. When they attack nearby with an ally, then they'll get advantage and potentially knock them prone. There's all kinds of cool feats that you can just mix and match from. But if there were more that you could do, ones that made creatures a little bit scarier, a little bit feel like they more have teeth. You know what I mean?
And that's what I love doing in High Point. I don't try to make every encounter stand out, but I try to make them unique in the sense of, whether I'm just doing a couple wolves versus, just some bandits. I always try to put in something like morale. I try to put in some kind of understanding of why they're there. I don't just try to just say you're going to fight them, right? I'm really trying to get away from the whole, fight to the death aspect. I'm actually really, I announced this on one of my streams, but one of the bigger announcements I'm going to make for High Point soon, once I figured it out, is I'm going to make a huge change to how HP works, and I'm going to make a huge change to the rule sets of High Point to move away from the fight to the death. I want to basically, kind of what I've been talking about recently, about how final blows should be intentional and not the standard. They should be the exception, not the rule. I want to move to that. So I'm working officially on how I'm going to migrate and manage that, because it's also going to tie in. If I do that at the same time, it's going to tie into the way that I've talked to you about how I want to do the progressive HP, the diminutive HP, where I want 10% HP. I want, when you have 100 HP, I want 10 HP to feel like 10 HP. I'm so sick and tired of having someone at 5 HP and being like, I'm going to swing with all my might. And I'm like,
yo, and
like,
imagine those moments where the player's like, no. This is a killing blow. Like,
and that's my point, right? Like,
and you make those real, serious moments.
Yeah. I want these moments to feel better, because also I want to get rid of the unnecessary TPKs, because getting rid of the standard final blow, getting rid of, fight to the death, will allow a much more, I don't want to say a video game-esque narrative, because it's not just going to be a fade to black and you wake up nearby, but it gets rid of that whole, like, I absolutely can't stand how healing works for the most part. Like, healing's just kind of crap for the most part. Like, I want something that is better representative of what you go through. But I also, like, I mean, I have a bigger range. I mean, you saw that in the Discord. I have a huge range of healing potions in High Point, because it makes sense. As you get more money, you would have access to better healing potions, right? But having a HP system that's not so black and white, not so, just basic, I think will better represent for the players how advanced their characters have gotten, right? Like, imagine starting out at level 1, you rolled a crap character, you got or a mage or something, you got 4 HP, right? You take 1 HP and you're already having negatives, right? Let's say you're at 10 HP, you take a couple hits and you're like, I'm good, and then you take that 3rd hit and you're like, now I'm winded, now I can't walk as fast. But then all of a sudden you're at, you now have 30 HP and it takes you 5 hits to get to start to feel it. You're at 100 HP, now it takes you 8 hits. Like, it makes you start to realize, like, man, every fight I have, I can take more. Because right now, your HP goes up and you can take more, but one powerful hit will still wipe you, right? And it's like, that's not as good as when you feel that like the degradation. And the degradation will help, I think, adjust combat, right? If you have an NPC who doesn't want to die, you can end fights better. If you don't have a fight to the death as the basic, you can end combat with better scenes. I mean, how many times, like, you see in movies, right? They're in a fight and they, they're at, how many, like, usually players only get to do like a monologue moment if they crit it, right? If it's like it's the killing blow and you critted, how do you do it? And then they get to monologue a little bit. But think about every, TV show, movie, and all of that stuff. How often where it's like after the big old fight, they're all bloody, they walk up, they're tattered, and there's the one guy, the winner, he just gets to go up, and have his little monologue, grip him by the scruff, and then just I'm not going to kill you, and then just lets him go. And it's it's an impactful moment, right? Or you tie him up, or you do something, but those are more impactful moments, and you can have more of them, right? I mean, imagine halfway through a fight where you say, the guy goes down to his knees and you can see he's struggling to hold up his sword, and he starts to speak, and you have to give them that choice. Do you let him speak and you're still in initiative, but do you basically end combat here and hear him out, or do you make the choice to take his life? And then if you do this, if this isn't the standard, right, you can knock out the party and continue the storyline instead of TPKing them, right? If knockout is the standard, if 0 HP is a knockout, or you knock them out before they get to 0 HP, right? These are things that you could do better. Stabilization makes more sense instead of death saving throws. You can have these ranges where so much HP loss will guarantee death, but otherwise you're knocked out.
Like, certain classes might give a constitution saving throw to potentially maintain consciousness.
Yeah, Olivia says HP isn't so much health points as more heroic points. How hard a character fights before he goes down, and that's the thing with me. I've always had the traditional mindset that basically HP to me is way more than health, right? It's not just physical damage, it's not cuts, it's not blood and gashes. For me, HP is everything from the physical damage that you're taking, the amount of pain your character can just put up with, the amount of fatigue that you are under, like the loss of HP is fatigue that you're going through. The more HP you have, the more stamina you have, the more fatigue, the less fatigue that you have. all of these things are HP, right? That's why health potions to me are never properly represented, because people are like, oh yeah, you have a giant gash, through your chest, you drink a potion, sleep, and it's gone. And it's like, but why do you assume that just because you're at 1 HP, you're missing limbs? Yeah. 1 HP, like if you think about those movies where the good guys lost and they all run away, they're not all missing limbs, they're not all bloody, but you know what? They're bruised. One guy has a black eye. They're all shoveling. They're barely able to take off their armor. Why? Because they're tired.
Got smashed in the chest with a big hammer. And
HP is also morale. Like, how many of those guys who are tired, but they don't have a bruise on them, but their morale's killed? They're just as devastated as everybody else. They need just as recovery time. Like, HP is so much more than just physical damage, and this is why I want to shift High Point away from a fight to the death baseline. I want to get rid of that as a foundation. I want to alter it to where knockouts are a thing. Final blows need to be intentional, and this is also a perfect time I can implement my degenerative HP mechanic, which is I've talked about this on stream before, but I'm working on a way to where the more HP you lose, kind of like some of the older editions where the more HP you lose, whether it's a percentage based, I'm thinking percentage based is probably going to be the easiest to keep track of, like both percentage based and also amount of damage that you take at each given time. But the more you lose, the more detriments your character will have until you heal back up, right? Because I feel like also loss of HP, it's emotional damage. Exactly, right? Like, that's the other thing too. Why does Vicious Mockery take HP if HP is physical damage? You're absolutely right. Why is psychic damage damage? If a dagger can do 1d4 of damage and psychic damage can do 1d4 of damage, then what is HP? That doesn't make any sense, right? How do you heal from that? But if you make HP more of a fatigue, morale, damage, pain tolerance, if you make it all of these things, then it makes sense. Why does someone getting poisoned with a dart? The dart did one-time damage, right? A dart does like 1d4 damage, but then the poison makes you, lose HP over time. But why? It's not like burning your skin, but it's making you tired. It's making you lose focus. It's making you less concentrated, right? These are the things that HP represents. And that's why I want to move into this fatigue-based HP system to where as you lose HP, the closer you get to the lower ends, the more detrimental effects you're going to have. I've written this up. I don't remember. I don't have it up there, but I essentially it's going to be things like you're going to start losing movement the more HP you lose. You're going to lose AC because you're going to be slower. You're going to have less dexterity, so you're going to lose you're going to have negatives to your AC, negatives to attack to actually hit the enemy, possibly negatives to damage, and eventually that's just going to keep going down until eventually you would pass out. And I think that's much more representative in battle, because if you're steamrolling the battle, right? Who cares? That's how heroes should feel. But if one of your players is getting down, I just don't like the idea that someone who has 100 HP could be at 5 and they're swinging their sword just as they were at the very beginning of battle. That's not realistic. If you've taken that much damage, if you've taken that much damage, if you've exerted yourself that much in battle, you're not really going to be able to maintain that all the way through, right? And that's where it's like you have things like we've talked about like adrenaline rushes, second wins, things that would make sense to re-embolden you. But the idea that you're on death's door, you have 1 HP, and you're telling me that you're just going to walk up, you have all of your movement, you have all of your attacks, you have everything that you can do since the very beginning of battle, but you're about to bleed out. I just don't buy it. And I also just don't like the idea that everything has to come down to a battle to the death, right? If you're actually dungeon delving, totally understandable. But when you're, just fighting bandits in town, it's always been a hard thing to understand, like, where are the dead bodies going? Who's keeping track of all of this, right? So I really like the idea of blending these two together, having a non-fight to the death mechanic to where final blows have to be intentional, and bringing in this new fatigue-based mechanic to where it's degenerative. So the longer you're in a fight and the more damage and fatigue that you've taken on, it's more dynamic in the sense of you may want to back out of this fight. You may want to leave, and I want that to be more of an option. We rarely see the option to leave or flee combat, and I want to see that narratively where both sides, both the enemy and the party, can choose to back out of a fight if it's not going their way, because strategically that makes more sense than just always being like, oh, well, we're all gonna die anyway, so just keep fighting. Like, it just didn't sit well with me. Now I see the cleric holding pep-up talks in the middle of battle, right? And that's the other thing too. It's like, it makes a lot more sense if you look at it from a much wider prism, I guess, you know? All right, so how long have we been? Wow, that was a nice intro, nice little warm up there. But we got some fun stuff. We have 8 pages, 8 pages of details, but it's mostly just bullet points. But yeah, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna talk about ranged weapons. We're gonna talk about everything from the weapons themselves, the mechanics. We're gonna talk about combat. We're gonna talk about cover. We're gonna try to cover everything that I was able to find and parse out from each edition, and we're gonna try to expand on that. We're gonna see. I hope you guys are really liking the. I mean, I guess I hope you guys are liking. Obviously, you guys helped to make affiliate, but I hope that the history of episodes are enjoyable. They're one of my favorites so far. It's been really great to do the research and to take a look at some of the older editions, and it's also nice to piece together as basic as I can. What each edition tried to do and where their insights were, and just try to see like how they adopted new ideas each iteration. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really excited for it. And as soon as Kage gets back, we can start. Yeah, going through this, it's really interesting. Let's see. So, forget how much changed. Yeah, so for the most part, the biggest thing that changed really over time and over most of the systems was additional mechanics, right? So the standard mechanics pretty much stayed the same in terms of how combat worked, but all of the additional mechanics were what they expanded on each edition. So yeah, that's gonna be fun to go over. You good. Just kind of doing a little overview here. So yeah, the history of ranged weapons. I would say, like, yeah, it's funny. Not surprisingly, the base mechanics for combat haven't really changed much.
Okay. This is all the way back since AD&D.
This is OD&D. We're going to go back to before we had actual first edition. But yeah, combat itself hasn't really changed. What does change the most are like the additional aspects of combat, like the additional mechanics and features that you can get with ranged combat, because it goes up from very basic to much more complicated and intricate, but how you fight ranged has always been the same kind of thing. So yeah, basically the overview of it. So I guess we can start with the history of ranged weapons, ranged combat, and cover.
I so seriously, this is just a fault about me as a DM, as a player, all of the above. I 100% forget about cover 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's underutilized, but it's also just because this is where, again, it's setting the scene, right? A lot of setting and scenarios don't really have cover options, or they're very obvious, and most people don't allow for that kind of advantage, so they try to usurp the advantage as soon as they can, right?
I will say I do like elevation.
Elevation's great when it can be used properly.
But I forget about cover.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't actually think about doing I don't think I read anything specifically about elevation. But I didn't take any notes about elevation when I was doing this. I didn't even think about that.
Interesting.
I didn't think to actually
The only thing that I've heard, at the very least in recent times, is that if you are at least 20 feet above your target, you have advantage.
Yeah, let me look up one of because I don't think anywhere in any of my notes here.
And if I'm correct, that should include ranged spell attacks.
Did I take any notes on? Yeah, because I have the ranged weapons. I have the actual like mechanics of combat. I have the range categories. Because I was more focused on the range categories and the cover for each iteration. Let's see. Because I took bulk notes, and then these are just like my detailed ones. So.
That's fair. Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I think that's why there's I didn't get very much, but it looks like I do have a little bit here. Okay, that's why. That's why. Let me add that detail. No, that's why. I think that's why, because even up until 3rd edition, the first time they mentioned elevation was for melee combat.
Melee combat?
Yeah, because 3rd edition was the first time that they said during melee combat, you can get a +1 to your attack if you're like on elevated ground. But otherwise, up until then, it's basically just been, I think it was mentioned once in one of the DMGs of, hey, if they're higher ground, maybe you want to give them a bonus to hit. But the first official one was for melee combat.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then
I had not heard of that.
It must be 5th edition because I don't even think 5th edition it doesn't even look like 5th edition has an official rule. It looks like it's just more of an expectation, and even in the DMG, I think that's why I didn't have anything in here, because that's it. The only notes that I was able to pull of any of the editions is that 3rd edition had it for melee combat, and 5th edition it's highly encouraged to give them a bonus. And there might be an optional rule out there, but I don't think there's a core ruling.
Interesting. I will have to look up.
Double check that if you can real quick while we're going through this. That's probably why I don't have any notes on it, because I just didn't come up anywhere.
That's all right.
Yeah, a little sneak peek, but yeah, let's get into this. Let's get into the history, starting back with original D&D, before the books, before everything. This was all the way back in the 70s. So this is where we get the most basic understanding. This is where obviously this is where a lot of things first implemented. We had very basic weapons, right? So I don't even think they had the difference in bows at that point. I think you just had a bow or a crossbow. Pretty sure it was just that. It wasn't even a short or a long bow at that point. Bow and crossbow and slings. So very limited in terms of ranged weapons.
Very and then different, versatile.
Yeah, and this was also back when like they didn't have a lot of expanded combat, right? This was just basic, just math, you know. But you had Hoylepa successfully rolled to hide in shadows. Goodbye. So yeah, it was very focused, very, very minimal. It was basically, this is where we're going to hear this basically every time, but this is where we just kind of get the first inclination that range combat was determined by a D20. So it's like, that's the one thing that has always been. It is a D20 roll to roll combat. That's the one thing that will never change.
Right.
But other than that, we get the basic weapons of, again, bows, just bows as a crossbows and slings. The attack roll was basically just a straight roll to hit on a d20, applying any modifiers based on the target's AC and range. Now, we did have range categories way back then. Now, back then, it was short, medium, and long.
Okay.
And penalties for medium and long ranges were applied.
Oh, also the short, medium, and long ranges.
Yes, there are 3 different ranges back then. And then damage base was on the back then it was based on the weapon type. I think it eventually changed to the ammo type.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, because they were just bows, crossbows, and sling, each type of weapon did a different damage, whereas eventually they started adding in ammo damage.
Yeah.
So the range categories were short, medium, and long. Short had no penalties to attack. Medium had a -2, and long range had a -5.
Okay.
Which I prefer. I actually personally like this a little bit more instead of just the short, long. Like the standard and then disadvantage. I kind of like the medium long range. I kind of like a progressive. You know what I mean? It makes it feel more challenging and you have more options.
That's fair. And
I like the negative penalties over just straight disadvantage.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't mind it being short, medium, and long, where long range is at a disadvantage, short is a -2, and then or medium's a -2. That'd be fine. I really do wish that we had like some difference other than just straight disadvantage.
Yeah. Okay.
And then cover. In OD&D, cover didn't have any explicit rules. So it was more of DM discretion on whether or not you could convince them, hey, if I'm behind something, you can't shoot me. It was just more of a, I shut the door, you can't shoot me. But there was no definitive how much you covered. It was narrative.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, I've always liked that in terms of these type of mechanics. I understand why they drilled down a little bit more with these kind of mechanics, but personally, it just makes more narrative sense of what does it mean, right? But again, when you have 5th edition being so combat oriented, people want to know what exactly is it.
Yeah.
So that was OD&D, basic.
Okay.
Basic. Now, once we get to AD&D, so this is covering 1st and 2nd edition. So with 1st and 2nd edition, we did get an expansion of the weapon types. So we got longbows, short bows, heavy and light crossbows, darts, throwing axes. Now we got some more ranged weapons. Now we got some more stuff going on. Mechanically speaking, we are still on the D20 system, but they did detail out a little bit more of the rules, specifically for ranges, penalties. We got rate of fire. So that's something that AD&D brought up because before it was just 1 attack per round. Now you get kind of a rate of fire, so eventually you can build up there. And then we've also expanded into ammunition, specialized ammunition, magical arrows. Now we're starting to do extra damage. It's not just based off of the weapon you're using. And this was also in the time when thieves, because I always forget this little thing. This is one of those like old school rules that I don't remember anymore. But thieves actually had a backstab that could be used at range under very specific conditions.
Interesting. Were they like throwing their dagger in the back of someone's neck?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was like you had to be hidden successfully. You had to be behind them. There was a couple different things you had to do, but yeah, you could backstab at range under certain conditions, which is kind of just like that was dope.
All right.
And we first got cover rules introduced in first edition. First edition was the first one to actually make rules more than just,
Right.
can you see me? Where are we at? So that was that. Cover is addressed in context of missile fire and other ranged attacks. So here we go. So starting with first edition, this is kind of a little bit more of a breakdown. So first edition expanded the weapon types. We're still using the D20 with modifiers. Now the category ranges got more clear definitions for short, medium, and long, and more defined penalties. We'll get to that in just a second. We did introduce cover rules. We have now a rate of fire. So there's an opportunity to fire more than once per round, starting in this area.
That's pretty sweet.
And then more detailed damages based off of weapon type, targets, and ammo. So expanding what actually does the damage. And the range categories resulted in no penalties for short range, medium range, specific penalties applied based on the weapon type. Usually it was still around the +2 or the -2, but different weapons had their own unique categories for medium. Okay. And then long range had more specific. It was typically also, or like more severe penalties, still typically -5 to hit. But again, different weapons would even have harder ones based on the type of weapon, if it made sense that you couldn't, go that far. And if you guys are interested, we could go through that, but each one has a specific chart. Like each weapon had, back then it was literally every weapon had a different version for each short, medium, and long. So it gets kind of hefty, but I do like that they expanded on it and then we got a lot more weapons. Now for first edition and cover. Cover first had the mechanics called soft and hard cover. So yeah, we didn't even get like levels. Soft and hard cover. So soft cover, partial obstacles like bushes or wooden fences typically provide like a smaller bonus to AC, whereas hard cover, like solid obstacles like walls, boulders, would provide you more. So this is like a +1 or a +2 to your AC to be hit, depending upon, because it wasn't like full cover, it was just dependent upon what are you hiding behind.
Okay.
So it was still giving those vibes, but
so like a bale of hay. Is that soft cover?
So let's see. So I think so basically, it would basically be that, like a bush, a bale of hay. I think it's not just the material, but it's also the visibility, because like a wooden fence is pretty solid, but I can see you behind it. Okay. So you would apply modifiers, like soft cover would give you possibly a 1 if you're generous. You can give them a +2 to their AC. Hard cover would give them a +2 or more, and then essentially and then you had No, that's still second. Where are we going? I scrolled down by accident too much. So yeah, it was a +1 or +2 as a base, or you can go higher if you wanted like extra options. But basically, the attacker just had to roll higher than your AC plus that whatever bonus you were getting for soft and hard. So yeah, soft cover was basically I can still see you and I could probably shoot through it. Hard cover would be you're primarily obscured and I probably couldn't shoot through it, so it makes it harder for me to hit. Now, does that make any more sense than what we have now? Not really, because I would have preferred... Again, this is the first iteration of cover, first draft.
Right.
So it's going to get better, but obviously fails in a lot of ways, I think.
Right.
So, yeah, didn't really do a whole lot, but hey, at least we got cover. At least they're starting to think about it now.
Right.
So second edition, all they really did was expand the weapon list. We got some more exotic stuff. I mean, a lot of, expansion happened in second edition. So just more weapon types that are considered ranged. We're still in the D20 mechanic, D20 plus your modifiers and everything else like that. And then we are going to go over some range differences and more rate of fire adjustments, and then we got a lot more specialty ammunition in second edition. Like a lot wider range. And this is, I believe, the edition where they lean more heavily into it's the ammo, not the weapon. So now it's primarily
and that's kind of the vibe. No, I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with ranged weapons in my second edition characters. Either of them, really.
Yeah.
One was more magic and one was more melee.
Mm-hmm.
But I do notice that, like, even in the character sheets, when I'm looking around, like, ammo is a big deal, and what kind of ammo you got is like a big deal, and you gotta.
Well, because instead of having to worry about whether your short bow or long bow or your crossbow does something different, a bolt does something different than a sheath arrow versus a flight arrow, right? Flight arrows were intended for longbows because they go further, so they do less damage, but they have further distance. Sheath arrows were like hunting arrows. They're quick, short distance, but gonna puncture and do some more damage, right?
Got it.
So you had these ideas where, why does the bow change it when really the thing that's hitting you is doing the damage? So then you started to realize, like, well, if we're gonna have magical arrows, how does that affect the bow's damage, right? So then you really start to realize that the method that you launch the ammo affects how far it goes, but the ammo is what really does the damage.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially with that magic power in there.
Yeah, exactly. So with the ranges, in second edition, you still had short, medium, and long. Short had no penalty. Medium, generally -2, again, unless specified by the weapon itself.
Okay.
Long range, typically -5, unless specified by the weapon itself. And this is where they also changed a small detail, where I think second edition is when they changed it to... they specified more detailed wise in terms of like feet and yards, the actual distances for short, medium, and long for weapons. So each one now had like definitive distances. Yes, because I think even in first edition they started to do that, but it wasn't as like precise. I don't remember. I don't have the actual notes about what the difference was between those two, but I do have a note that second edition was more specific on actually detailing out this is exactly the limit of how far that can go.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. So cover types for second edition. So we've seen that first edition try to do soft and hard cover. Didn't really feel right. Second edition gave us like one of the best, in my opinion. And this one comes down to level of cover. So this is where we have everything from quarter cover, half cover, 3/4 cover, and full cover.
Okay, yes.
This is that introduction. So
yes.
Quarter cover, minor cover such as low walls, small trees, provide a +2 to your AC.
Okay.
Half cover, so more substantial cover like larger trees or pillars, provide a +4. Okay. 3/4 cover, significant cover such as arrow slits or small windows, provide a +7. And full cover, complete cover, making the target untargetable.
Untargetable.
This
like
is
you
to
behind
me.
the wall.
This is to me one of the best mechanics for cover. When it comes to ranged combat, this feels right. It has the right negatives or bonuses, like basically, the negatives to hit, but I like that it's about your AC, not about the person's to hit. Because that was the other thing too, right? In first edition, it was... it still was a bonus to your AC. So I always like it to be a bonus to your AC. But yeah, I like the fact that it goes all the way up to being untargetable. I really do like that.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. And I think these ranges, +2, +4, +7,
yeah,
I think that's legit. Makes it hard, but not impossible.
Yes.
And then we got those clear definitions, and then... Oh, and second edition was the first one to map the ruling that cover also affected spells.
Really?
Yeah, so you have the same effect on spell targeting with cover.
So I'm curious because there's a lot of spells that I hear in the wording that it's talking about like, and can go around corners and can see over... doorways up to these many feet thick or whatever the case may be. So is all that wording like
a lot of that wording came from, I think, these early editions of cover, right? Because like magic missile always hits its target, right?
Yes.
But if they're fully behind cover, you can't target them. Remember, this is untargetable under full cover, whereas 3/4 cover just gives you a bonus to your AC. So cover only matters when it comes to spells if they need to target you, and it matters on your AC. Otherwise, if the spell requires a target, if you are under full cover, you're untargetable. But
Yeah.
second edition officially stated that includes spells as the untargetable part. I'll be right back.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah, I did not realize how. I guess. I want to say this is really something that's tied to ranged stuff, but I didn't realize how much cover has to do and how and affects combat just in general. It's I don't know, it's crazy to me how this one little tactic, and again one that's unfortunately so underutilized, I feel like, in a lot of places, especially a lot of places where I know a lot of people would want to get into it, because there's what do you call it, there's a lot of games that I really appreciate, one of which is I can never think of the name when I want to talk about it.
Of course not.
The stupid one with the aliens, and they come in, and
so many games with aliens.
You can like turn your people into like part aliens, and they have cool mental powers. God, it's a weird tactics game. XCOM, that's the one. Goodness.
Once you said tactics game, I knew where you were going.
That's one of my favorite tactics games. But anyways.
But yeah, so yeah, I really liked that about cover and the specifics of targeting with magic. All right, so third edition, of course, we get a lot of expansions with third edition. The types of weapons and ammo expanded, and we also got the introduction of the composite bow.
The composite bow?
In third edition, introduced the composite bow.
Really?
Which I don't think is in 5th edition anymore.
Yes, I don't. Do you have a description of this?
I might be able to pull one up.
I would love to hear what a composite bow is. Juggling my beverages, guys. Don't judge me.
Let's see here.
Here we are.
So let's see here. So the composite longbow was a martial two-handed projectile weapon. And let's see. Does a varying amount of damage based off of size. What did it do? So you can use it while mounted. So there's strength rating. So they all have a strength rating that you had to use.
Was this one like reduced?
So, okay, so here's someone talking about it. So, the biggest difference is... So, the biggest difference between the longbow and composite longbow is that the composite longbow has a worse off short range and medium range. So, it has a lower short and medium range than their longbow. But it had a better speed factor. So, it had a better speed factor.
Like you could get more shots off?
I think so. So because when bows can shoot two, so I was the tape point composite longbow is the strength bonus, while regular ones do not. Because yeah, regular bows don't have a strength requirement, or they have a strength bonus. Oh. Gotcha. Okay. So they have a higher speed factor. They have different. It has a different range, but the composite longbow adds your strength bonus. You can use your strength bonus. That's the whole reason why you would use it. Is it gets to use your strength bonus.
Oh, that's interesting.
So,
Imagine like a barbarian getting a hold of one of those. He ain't got like crap for dex because he's too freaking bulky, but that man can fucking pull one of those suckers back. I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah, so that's what it was. That's the only thing really what it was is it has a better, so it has worse off short and mid range, has better max range. It is faster and it uses your strength and it adds your strength bonus. So that's why the composite longbow was better. There's also a comment about it was also to help tie into a certain time frame. Like depending on when your time frame was, it was more historically accurate for certain settings.
Right.
So it was also just an alternative to the bow. But yeah, there were some benefits to having a composite longbow. Let's see. So we're still on the D20 system, of course, but you also got to have more feats now that directly enhanced your ranged weapons.
Okay.
So things like point blank shot, so you don't have any disadvantage on face to face. That was a feat that you can get, which is fucking dope.
That's cool.
Rapid shot, so I think that like every a couple turns you can use a bonus action to do an extra shot.
Okay. Sweet.
And then we also got rules for cover and concealment, critical hits, and sneak attacks for ranged weapons as well. So they enhanced all of those and parsed them out a little bit better, so you actually had more consistency with them.
Okay.
Let's see here. So, what happened to range? So each ranged weapon had a specific range increment. So this is now where we finally get away from the short, medium, and long, and now we have a buy system. This is where the buy system originated, where we have basically the two-way system, the short and long. This is where it originates in 3rd edition, because you have, it's not short and long. It's originally it was called normal and beyond normal. So normal range attacks were made within the first range increment and suffered no penalties. So normal range of operations. Then you had beyond normal ranges up to a maximum, and that was taken at a penalty. And this was at to a maximum of 5 ranges. So attacks could be made up to a maximum of 5 range increments with the cumulative -2 penalty for each range. So for example, a longbow had a range increment of 100 feet, but could shoot up to 500 max.
Okay.
But each increment beyond the first 100 to 200 would incur a -2 penalty. So its normal operating range was 1 to 200. If you were less than 100, you'd get disadvantage, and if you were over 200, it'd be considered beyond normal.
Okay.
For every 100 beyond 200, you'd get a -2 penalty. So 200 to 300 is a -2. 3 to 4, -4. And then the max 4 to 5 would be a -6.
Okay.
So it would keep creeping up every time you pushed it another 100 feet beyond its normal operating range. So that's where we got what we see now, which is the standard, 2-range set. And I like how I don't think 5th edition explains it as nicely, but maybe that I'm wrong. So when we get there, we'll see. And then 3rd edition continues to simplify the standard of cover. So they do quarter cover is a +2 to AC, half cover is a +4, 3/4 +7, total cover prevents any attacks against the target. So a little bit different verbiage, but for the most part, it's still the same thing. The more cover you have, the higher your AC up until the point where you can't be attacked. You can't be a target. And then, let's see. Oh, and they did introduce a concept of improved cover. So total cover providing a more extensive cover. So the other thing is it prevents any attacks against the target, whereas the other one just said you couldn't be targeted. So a little bit of a difference in verbiage there. And 3rd edition officially made rule sets to where cover can actually affect area of effect spells, with targets potentially getting a bonus on saving throws as well.
Like,
so second edition said that cover
of a fireball.
Yeah, so second edition said, hey, cover can stop you from being the target of attacks and spells. Third edition said, not just the target, but other damage as well. Like the cover will protect you. So I'm really liking how they've thought through this. And again, you see that this is what I like about these deep dives, right? These histories. We get to see like what problems they came to solve.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because at first you're like, well, you need cover. Okay, here's cover. And it's like, well, it's great, but not being able to be targeted isn't enough. I need to like, what if something explodes near me and I'm behind something, right? A bush won't protect me as much. Just talking about
that, how involved cover really is in ranged combat.
Right. And again, it's interesting because cover's also fascinating in the sense that, let's say I'm in a bush, right? Mm-hmm. You can consider that full cover against a ranged attack, but only quarter cover against a AoE. That's like it's a bush. Visibly, you're full cover. I can't target you in a bush. Yeah. But if I put fireball next to that bush ain't gonna stop full cover. You know what I mean? So that's what I like third edition started to realize is that there's these two directions you can go when you're undercover.
Interesting.
And I like that they're making us think about it. So that's one of the things that I love when we see this is where, and you can also see what's happening in 5th edition, where it came from, like who started the ideas that implemented the rules that we see now. All right, well we have to do this. So 4th edition. Introduced more of a fantasy directive for it. This was all about tactical combat, so this was more oriented towards like classes, like the types of classes that use the weapons, and specific class features were more specific. Didn't really do anything to the types of weapons other than made it more fantasy-like. Still kept the D20 system and simplified just basically a lot of the rules because again it was so much more like churn out combat was 4th edition. And then because they had things like standard actions, minor actions, they tried to what they consider clear the rules in terms of action economy for players. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It just complicated everything. And basically they had the short range, long range. So again, they are the reason why we now call it short range, long range. I prefer 3rd edition of normal range and beyond normal because it makes it understandable more. 4th edition's just said, short and long. Short range, no penalty. Long is a -2. And that was it. Just a -2 penalty, which is just nothing.
Yeah.
Cover, they only had 2 types. You had partial cover and superior cover. Partial cover gave you a +2 to AC and reflex defense. Superior cover gave you a +5 bonus to AC.
Oh, wow.
But
okay,
that's just so dulled down compared to what cover should be. I understand that maybe half cover, 3/4 cover might be a quarter cover, maybe too much for people, but by a system of partial or superior is not enough. You know what I mean?
So wait, that's all there is though?
Two. Partial or superior. A +2 or a +5, that's it.
There's no more.
They got rid of the AoE. They got rid of the targeting. That's it.
There's no more full cover.
No.
There's no more.
They basically simplified it. They said that they wanted to simplify it to focus on the ease of play. That was the whole thing.
This is what edition?
This is 4th edition.
This is 4th edition. Okay.
Which it's funny because they tout it as cover played a significant role in combat, and yet they boiled it down to that. Exactly. Your face says it all.
A significant role? Yeah. Let's please strip all the role from it and then kill it. Oh, significant role.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's try 5th edition. Let's go back. So, obviously, they continue to expand the range of what ranged weapons are. I mean, now we got some of our favorites. I mean, we've always had things like javelins and stuff, but they've refined them a little bit more and made them a lot more optional. We have streamlined combat, as we've seen with a lot of 5th edition stuff. They always like to talk about streamlining stuff. But we have seen some differences in penalties, rate of fire, things of that sort. We've also seen some new feats come out, like Sharpshooter and Crossbow Expert, to help really broaden a lot of those subclasses and a lot of people to be able to take these ranged options to another level. Class features, spells, and magic items were also redesigned to help implement more ranged combat. And we've seen that as well in the types of ranged spells, in the types of variety that you can do. So I think in 5th edition really did try to bring back a good balance for ranged characters, because I do feel like even in earlier editions, as much as I like ranged combat, it wasn't a focus. 5th edition, I think, really was like, no, let's make ranged combat heavy. And I do agree that, yeah, they really brought ranged combat. I think ranged combat is a cornerstone now, right? Like before, you wanted a tank, you wanted a damage dealer, you wanted a healer, you wanted a spellcaster. But that was it. That was the trope, right? You might have wanted a pickpocket or someone who can pick locks. But rarely did the party accompaniment need a ranged fighter. Like very rarely did you say who has the bow. There was
usually somebody who I would call a flex.
Right,
and
that's the thing. The ranged person always had a bow as their secondary weapon, right?
Yeah.
5th edition saying, let's make ranged your primary thought and let's bring it to the forefront. So I appreciate that. So we're still in the D20 system as always, because we don't change. But we do have, now they've changed it to where instead of just other types of modifiers, now it's specific to the attacker's dexterity modifier and proficiency bonus if they're proficient in the weapon. So again, whereas the other ones, 2nd edition, they've had a lot of ways to give you bonuses, right? This, I honestly think 5th edition did one of the best ways to give the bonuses to ranged fighters, the dexterity and the proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
Fantastic, right? Because again, strength bonus makes no sense in this. It's more about where you hit, not the bow's doing all of the damage. The bow's doing all of the strength. You need to know how to handle the bow to hit the target right. And dexterity makes a lot more sense than intelligence or wisdom.
I will say, pulling back and holding those bowstrings for a while,
it takes strength.
Yes.
But your strength can't put anything into the shot.
And that's fair, which is why I would think the majority of anything that you would have is perhaps a strength requirement for depending on which bow you use.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't mind a strength requirement to use the bow. I think that dexterity was the way to go to add
yes.
that. So we have ranged. Ranged weapons have the 2 range increments: normal range, no penalty, and long range, disadvantage on attack rolls. Again, I think they should have said normal range and beyond normal. Just long range. It just makes it seem like, oh, but that's my longest range. But then you say it's disadvantage. I kind of like the other penalties as well, like the creep up penalty. That's my favorite. Like every 100 beyond it to its max. I really like that. But and then attacks beyond the weapon's maximum range are impossible, which makes sense. It just can't go that far, right? It's only gonna drop at some point. And we have cover, which targets behind cover gain bonuses to their AC, so you get a +2 if it's half cover, +5 for 3/4, and full cover makes you untargetable. So they went back to the multiple covers, but they still diced it up. Now we only have 3. So instead of having the quarter, half, 3/4, and full, which was before, we had 4 all the way back in 2nd edition, right? Yeah, quarter, half, 3/4, full. Now we just have half, 3/4, and full. So they got rid of the quarter cover. They got rid of basic quarter cover. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because if you think about what is quarter cover, like if only a quarter of you is covered, that's still a large target. I guess it's kind of hard to like judge that, right?
Yeah.
So we boiled it down. So still, I appreciate that they brought back multiple covers, though. I do like that they brought back full cover and made it untargetable. Yes. 100% great.
I believe that's important.
I don't have any notes here about AoE effectiveness, but I do believe you can also, in 5th edition, it also mentions AoE attacks are affected by cover.
The majority of AoE effects, because I will say they are very different.
Oh, but they're mostly saving throws now, so there really is no way to use cover to your advantage unless you give it a bonus on their saving throw, which 3rd edition did. 3rd edition specifically called out bonuses to saving throws.
Yes, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything super specific about it, which, again, I believe there should be. Like, you were talking about those options. I don't know if you said there were an optional rule about... my train derail.
It happens.
Disrespectful.
But yeah, okay, so with that, ammunition types... obviously, they brought back the tracking of ammunition being the primary source of the damage.
Yeah.
Thrown weapons as well, just kind of an expansion there. but we're not really worried about thrown weapons as much. I mean, I guess that's still the ranged weapons.
I mean, that was our last subclass that we did on Monday, the Shinobi.
Yeah.
Very
realistic,
thrown weapon heavy.
Yeah, and realistically, I mean, all of these rules apply to all of ranged weapons in general.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, I guess the difference between thrown and missile weapons is really range differences and variety. And what they can do, right? Obviously, a ranged weapon is also a melee weapon, whereas an arrow isn't always a melee weapon. It can be a stabby, but maybe only once, right? You can probably only stab it at once. Although that is a great improvised weapon that I would let people use, like as like a dagger, is like the just take an arrow and then stab it into somebody.
Interesting.
Let's see, and then of course expanded a little bit more on feats and spells to enhance what you can do. Things like sharpshooter, crossbow expert, what we talked about there before. And then you get things like rogue sneak attack. I think so it looks like 5th edition did bring back being able to do rogue sneak attack at distance under certain conditions.
Oh yeah.
So we'll have to look that up. We'll have to dive into rogue's sneak attack. Let's see. Can I pull anything up real quick?
Ranged sneak attack.
I'm trying to look up sneak attack real quick, because I think the thing is because sneak attack isn't specific enough to I was in the wrong thing, but I think it's because it only requires certain conditions to be met, so it actually doesn't specify melee. So let's see. So sneak attack. Hello. Don't move. Okay. So once per turn, you can deal an extra 1d6 damage to one creature you hit with an attack if you have advantage on the attack roll. So yeah, that's all it is. The attack must use a finesse or ranged weapon. Okay, so yeah, so 5th edition just flat out sneak attack on ranged.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't know, but it's because I don't use 2nd or 5th edition rules for that.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I do like that. Yep. So that's great. And then you get like the hunter's mark for rangers, and then fighters archery fighting style. So expanding more and more what you can do. Again, making ranged much more compatible with combat.
Yeah.
And then we get to line of sight, of course, has also been very big. It has been touched on in the other editions, but 5th edition is really more like specific about their line of sight rules being needed to be able to target people.
Yes. And wasn't there like some crazy argument about like, is through glass still line of sight?
Yeah, I think I think it's more of magic based. I think it's required I think it's magic, as I don't think anybody would argue that line of sight is broken by glass for physical objects. I think that argument was specific of, can you target someone with a magic spell on the other side of glass? Because that's more talking about how does magic operate, right? Is magic important enough for something?
Does it need to move through physical space like that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, and then other than that, yeah, that's basically, they did the line of sight extras, and then they changed the range requirements to just straight up disadvantage if you're long range. So if you're shooting beyond your normal range, it's just straight disadvantage. I don't like that. I think it's too much. I like the increasing penalties because again, having such a range that it's all of the same chance just doesn't make any sense to me, right? Because again, it's like if a longbow is normal range of 150 feet and a max range of 600 feet, attacks made between 151 and 600 are at disadvantage. That's huge. 150 to 600 is all of the same chance to hit. Bullshit. I'm sorry. That's up to 300. At least give me some penalty, and then beyond that, a disadvantage, right? But how is 300 feet the same as 600 feet with my aim? Like, how is 150 feet It just seems like it's too much for me personally to have disadvantage on all of that.
I don't disagree with you.
And then of course shorter range is disadvantage when they're up close. And then cover. So cover was the +2 on half cover, 3/4 give it +5. Total cover makes the target untargetable by attacks and spells requiring targeting. And then cover mechanics. Clear and easy to apply rules is what they kind of went for. Trying to, I think they definitely went more for the utilizing the environment in 5th edition more than they did in previous ones.
Okay.
So that's basically it. So like I said,
I'm here for that.
Most of the changes weren't so much in like how ranged combat works, more so that it was, what additive benefits, did they make it to make it more palatable? There we go. Changed the DPI and suddenly I couldn't find my mouse.
Terrible.
So realistically, the biggest thing that they changed over time was the weapon allotment, the types of weapons that you could use, the distances modified over time based on the weapons. The damage shifted from weapon to ammo, and cover changed quite a bit.
I'm kind of torn between the weapon and ammo damage. I like ammo damage, especially because, there's a lot of stuff you can do to the ammunition to change its properties to make sure that its damage is going to be affected by what it is.
Right.
Which just makes a whole lot of sense. But I also feel like there's something to be said for like any mundane damage that's going to be done by this thing. There's got to be something said for how hard that arrow is being shot through you and what type of arrowhead is on there, Right. If I got some like ice crystal, but it literally has these jagged edges on the edge.
And that's why I don't mind, I wouldn't mind the further distances applying a damage reduction, because it makes sense to me. Like, if you're in normal operating range, the idea is that if you're 10 feet or 100 feet within my normal operating, let's say my normal operating range with 100, right? If you're 10 feet, 50 feet, or 100, the difference in velocity between those within the 100 feet is going to be minuscule, right? Like from an actual bow's firing position, the time frame it takes to cross all of that between those two, that's going to be minimal. And that's why if you did long range, right? If you did the extended range, I wouldn't mind a damage drop off as well as a difficult to hit. And that's why for me, I totally understand why it's all about the arrow, right? Because the arrow, like why they did sheath and flight, and why you can do like hunter's arrows, right? Because if I hit you with an arrow that's designed not to come out and is designed to get an artery, that's gonna hit you differently than one that's designed to go through a target, because it's gonna pierce right through you. Like remember, like target arrows have a very flat, like bullet-like head, designed to just kind of go in and come out. Whereas hunting arrows are the ones that have the backward spikes, right? They're the actual points with the spike, because those aren't meant to come out. Those are meant to do damage. Those are meant to wound and bleed out. And so that would make sense, right? Like the different types of arrows you have, like a crossbow bolt is designed to basically pierce. It's like a bullet. It's not meant to go into you. It's meant to just hit you and keep on going. So that's another reason why, for me, it makes a lot of sense the type of arrow I choose. And I love adding arrow types, right? I have like 5 different types of arrowheads that I allow in a high point that adjust the damage that you do and have specialty effects, like making people bleed, making it to where they'll lose 1d4 HP every round or every turn, as long as it's in them, right? Like the idea that you can maim people. I like the idea of changing up, because again, like you were saying, like I fully get that the bow has some force, but that force to me does better translate to how far it's gonna toss the missile.
I definitely agree with that.
But what the missile is doing to you is where the damage is coming from. It's not how hard it hits you, right? Like if I walk up to you with a target arrow and I puncture your arm, versus if I took a hunting arrow and I walked up to you and punctured your arm, right? The target arrow will come out, the hunting one won't. That damage that you receive will technically be less than if I shot you with the bow, but at the same time, the arrow is going to do the same thing. The only difference with the bow is how deep it goes into you. But realistically speaking, that arrowhead does the same damage.
Yeah.
So like I said, there is an argument to be made of it's not the same as if I walked up to you and stabbed you with it, but that's where you could say it's improvised weapon and lower the damage. But again, the arrow's puncture wound will be the same regardless if it's from my hand or from my bow. And I think that's my justification why I like the idea of don't just change the arrow, but allow them to change the arrowhead, right? Like flight arrows do go further than sheath arrows, but then changing the head and mix and matching also can adjust damage and distance. Like it's kind of, you know, again, it's the best part about being able to customize your own arrow. Like I could give you the base one from the book, but imagine learning like how to change the feathers and make it go faster, make it more accurate for yourself. I love that aspect where I want to push my players not to read a book and pick out an item. I want them to go, why does it work this way? So what happens if I do this? And again, I think that's indicative of what D&D has done, right? They've taken these ideas and gone, well, what happens when we do this? Well, let's modify it, right? They've allowed the expansion to go with the flow and go with what was needed to make combat make sense over the decades. But I still think second and third edition had some things that are better. I still think the expanded cover was nicer. I don't like the disadvantage, but overall, I like where we've come.
Yeah. I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, so that's gonna be it. Let me just, I guess I'll just save these notes in case I ever need to come back to them. All right, but that is going to be us. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know it was actually kind of a smaller stream, a slower stream today, but that's fine. We snuck in with affiliates, so this isn't going to screw us.
That's right.
I do like the fact that one of the reasons why I wanted to guarantee we got affiliate before today is just in case we had a bad stream. And I think we only had 2 viewers most of the stream, so that is oh my gosh, look at you, Vixie, coming in at the last minute. Of course, trying to get your founder badge. Thank you so much. I love you, babe. Look at that. We got our very, very first subscriber. Of course, it's Vixie. I absolutely love it. How to wait to the very end, though? How to just sneak it in there? Thank you. But that's it. So that's how you get your founder's badge, y'all. If you want that, look at that. Look at that beautiful, beautiful founder's badge already. First month.
Perfect.
First. But yeah, so thank you guys so much. I do appreciate all of you. Hoylepa, thank you so much. I don't know if you're still lurking or if you're around, but thank you for joining us and spending your morning as you always do. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see anybody else. We didn't get to talk to Des about the issues, but hopefully they'll get that.
That's all right. Hopefully they can check it out.
It's while I do the outro, can you check is Big Dungeon still?
Let's
I'll raid out to her if she's still going. We need to get a bigger community so we can raid out some more people. But we need to start checking if she's going late. I'll raid out to her. But anyway, that is going to be us. We thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back on Monday where we have. Let me pull up the item that we will be looking at. We just did the Shinobi subclass.
Yes.
So
Dungeon is still streaming
on Monday, we will be doing the fighter subclass called Eminence, submitted by Hecate. So join us on Monday where we will do a review of a community creation. This one will be particularly a subclass, and then join us next Friday where we will continue D&D discussions and maybe do another history of, maybe do a deep dive, maybe just chit chat. We don't know. We'll never know. But if you want to know, you can get those updates in our Discord, and if you want to join our Discord community, you can get that link in the description right now. And if you liked this stream, if you missed anything, or if you want to see anything else that we've done in the past, all of our live streams are on our VOD channel on YouTube, and I will post that in the chat as well. So it has been fantastic to be here with you all today. We will be back every Monday and Friday as always, and then keep an eye out because on the YouTube channel we will be getting some shorts next month. Everything's gonna be kind of picking up, so we want to see you here with that. Join us if you're joining us on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the history of ranged weapons. But yeah, I hope you guys had a fantastic week, and I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you guys. Cheers.
Deuces, my friends.